It belonged to Qui-Gon Jinn, and by the time Obi-Wan called it to his own hand from the pit below, he had already lost his blue blade to the same shaft Darth Maul had force pushed him into. He ignited the green saber, vaulted over the Sith Lord, and cut him in half, ending the duel with a weapon that belonged to his mentor. After Naboo, Obi-Wan built a new lightsaber with a blue blade, and years later, after reaching the rank of Jedi Master, he built another, and it was blue again. 3 lightsabers across a lifetime of war and exile, and every one of them carried the same color, even though the Jedi that Obi-Wan Kenobi grew into looked, by nearly every measure, like someone who should have carried green. Long before Obi-Wan built any of those sabers, the Jedi Order had sorted its knights into 3 branches. Each branch had its own philosophy of service, and in the Legends timeline, its own blade color. A Legends-era training manual called the Jedi Path describes the system in detail, through chapters written by Jedi who belonged to each branch. The first branch dedicated its members to combat. The Jedi who followed it trained for 3 hours a day in running, unarmed drills, and lightsaber sparring. They treated the saber as more than just a weapon. Their blades were a part of who they were. The chapter written by a Jedi ace named Crix's son Burris calls the lightsaber the branch's weapon and symbol. He describes its members as the Republic's first line of defense in an era when the Republic had no standing military. Some became peacekeepers stationed on lawless Outer Rim worlds, others flew starfighters, and the most experienced trained the next generation as lightsaber instructors at the temple. The Order knew them as Jedi Guardians, and they carried blue lightsabers, a tradition rooted in solidarity among the branch rather than a mandate from the Council. In the margins of the manual, Yoda noted that the title was Guardian, not Warrior, a distinction Obi-Wan's story would need some time to earn. The second branch cared less about the blade and more about the word. Jedi Consulars served on the Council of Reconciliation, negotiated political disputes alongside the Republic Diplomatic Corps, and leaned heavily on the Force in situations where a Guardian would have reached for a saber. The manual describes Consulars as capable fighters when pushed, but notes that most of them keep their weapons on their belts unless no other option remained. The greatest among them earned the title of Sage Master, and their ranks included the Order's finest seers, healers, and researchers. Jedi whose connection to the Force ran deeper than their connection to any weapon. Consulars carried green lightsabers, and their preferred combat style, Niman, carried a reputation across the Order as the diplomat's form. A third branch, the Jedi Sentinels, split the difference between the other two and blended Force training with civilian skills like investigation, espionage, and computer slicing. Sentinels carried yellow blades and tended to embed in communities for months or years at a time, rather than moving from crisis to crisis. The canon timeline treats these classifications more loosely. The official Star Wars databank describes Jedi lightsabers as typically green or blue, without tying either color to a specific role, and the Guardian, Consular, and Sentinel labels carry far less formal weight in canon than they do in Legends. However, both timelines agree on one fact about Obi-Wan Kenobi. During the Clone Wars, General Grievous greeted him aboard a Separatist warship by calling him the Negotiator, a title he earned over the years of choosing diplomacy over combat. Obi-Wan's own flagship, a Venator-class Star Destroyer, shared the name. By the Legends framework, a Jedi known galaxy-wide for negotiation, trained by a green blade-carrying master, and inclined towards patience over aggression, looks far more like a consular than a guardian, and a consular's blade is green. Obi-Wan carried blue for his entire life, through 3 different lightsabers and decades of service, and the reason has less to do with the color system and more to do with who he was before he ever chose a title. Obi-Wan was one of several Jedi who left handwritten notes in the margins of the Jedi Path. During their years in the Order, his annotations painted a clear picture of a Padawan drawn to discipline and restraint from the start. In the section covering control abilities, the family of Force techniques centered on mastering one's own body, he noted that control led to meditation breakthroughs and committed to that discipline above all others. Rising meditation, a deep trance state that broadened a Jedi's connection to the Force, earned his highest endorsement. When the manual discussed blasters and other ranged weapons, he called them uncivilized. When it described Muke, a lightsaber technique designed to sever multiple limbs in a single cut, he wrote that he can never imagine a reason to use it. Every annotation points in the same direction. A Jedi who treated the lightsaber as sacred, who rejected shortcuts and brutality, and who built his sense of purpose around control rather than raw power. His choice of combat style carried the same philosophy into the field. Among the 7 recognized forms of lightsaber combat, Obi-Wan gravitated towards Seresu, the third form, known across the Order as the Resilience form. The Jedi Path describes Seresu as the most inward-directed of all styles, one in which the practitioner becomes the calm center of a fight while opponents wear down around them. A Seresu master does not press the attack. A Seresu master outlasts it. The form conserves energy, exhausts the opponent, and wins by patience rather than force. For a Jedi classified as a Guardian, the combat-focused branch of the Order, choosing the most defensive style available was an unusual move, and every detail of his later career points to a Guardian who made that choice on purpose. He lost his first lightsaber on Naboo when Maul kicked it into the shaft. The second was confiscated on Geonosis after Separatists captured him, and he never recovered it. The third, built shortly after at the start of the Clone Wars, carried him through the rest of the war, into exile on Tatooine, and aboard the Death Star, where he lowered his guard and let Darth Vader's blade pass through him so Luke Skywalker could escape. Across decades of war, loss, and solitude, the color never changed. Obi-Wan did not drift towards green as his reputation for diplomacy grew, and he never built a saber that reflected anything other than what the first one found in him. Obi-Wan's master was everything the Consular Path described. Qui-Gon Jinn followed the living force above all else, the raw, immediate current of energy that bound every creature in the galaxy together, and his annotations throughout the Jedi Path read like a manifesto for that belief. Where the manual laid out the Jedi Code's prohibition against attachment, Qui-Gon wrote that if the living force gave rise to compassion, even love, he saw no reason to treat those feelings as a threat. On the section describing the Outer Rim as lawless and dangerous, he countered that the Outer Rim was where the Jedi had a true purpose. He defied the Council on Coruscant when he insisted on training Anakin Skywalker, a boy the Council had already refused. And he did it openly, in front of the full Council, because the Force told him the boy mattered more than the rules. Qui-Gon carried a green blade, and his whole life earned it. Obi-Wan watched all of this from close range, and chose a different path. His own annotations in the same manual tell the other side of the story. In the section about reaching out to living creatures through the Force, a practice Qui-Gon pushed him towards constantly, Obi-Wan admitted that his patience ran thin whenever they attracted what he called a gaggle of pathetic life forms. In another entry, he confessed that he struggled to connect with Qui-Gon at all, finding his master hard to read and the missions overwhelming. The tension between them was not hostility, it was a gap in philosophy. Qui-Gon bent the rules because the Force told him to. Obi-Wan held the rules because the Order depended on someone holding them. After Qui-Gon died on Naboo, Obi-Wan honored his master's final wish and took Anakin as his Padawan. But he did it from inside the system. He reported to the Council, followed its directives through a galactic war, and raised Anakin within the structure of the Order rather than against it. The green blade Obi-Wan borrowed on Naboo belonged to a Jedi who lived by instinct and compassion. The blue blade Obi-Wan built afterward belonged to a Jedi who lived by discipline and duty. Neither answer was wrong. They were two different responses to the same question about what a Jedi owed the galaxy, and Obi-Wan's response never changed, no matter how much of Qui-Gon's wisdom he absorbed along the way. The Jedi Order's color system, with all its Legends-era detail and philosophical weight, traces back to a problem that had nothing to do with the Force. In the original trilogy, lightsabers came in two colors, red for the Sith, blue for the Jedi. Luke Skywalker carried a blue blade in the first two films, and early promotional material for Return of the Jedi showed him with the same blue saber on the sail barge above Jabba's palace. During filming, the blue blade disappeared against the bright desert sky, and the production team changed it to green. A single fix, made for visibility rather than meaning, introduced the idea that a Jedi's blade color could vary, and everything that followed the Guardian and Consular distinctions, the personality-driven crystal core, the fan debates over who should carry which color was built backward from a practical decision that no one at the time intended to carry narrative weight. When the prequel trilogy introduced dozens of Jedi on screen at once, blue and green were distributed across the Order without a consistent in-universe explanation. Obi-Wan carried blue because his older self in A New Hope had carried blue, a thread of visual continuity linking the prequels to the original films. The role-playing games and video games, most notably Knights of the Old Republic, later assign each color to a class of Jedi, giving players a gameplay reason to choose between Guardian, Consular, and Sentinel. The Jedi Path codified that system into a reference text, and from there it entered the broader fan vocabulary as though it had always been part of the story. The color system that fans used to argue Obi-Wan should carry green was never designed with Obi-Wan in mind. It was reverse engineered from a film edit and a game mechanic, then layered onto characters whose blades had already been chosen for other reasons. Knowing that history does not invalidate the lore, but it does reframe the question. The more interesting answer is not why the production gave Obi-Wan blue, but why the story, once the lore existed, kept justifying it. The deeper answer lives inside the lightsaber. A Jedi blade is powered by a Kyber crystal, a Force-attuned stone found in the ice caves of Ilum, and a handful of other worlds across the galaxy. According to the official Star Wars databank, a Kyber crystal is colorless until a Jedi bonds with it for the first time, and the color it takes on after that bond is permanent. The Jedi Path describes the same process from the legend side, noting that Padawans travel to Ilum to select their crystals through meditation, and that during the process they may experience visions of their future or glimpses of the Force's deeper structure. The legend's construction mantra captures how total the bond is. The crystal is the heart of the blade. The heart is the crystal of the Jedi, and all are intertwined. The crystal does not respond to a title or a career track. It responds to the individual. Yoda's annotation in the manual captures the prerequisite in a single line. A Padawan must know who they are before they can build what they carry. Yoda warned in the margins of the Jedi Path that Guardian was the title, not warrior, and Obi-Wan spent his entire career proving the difference. A Jedi who fought with the patience of a diplomat, negotiated with the resolve of a soldier, and never once needed a different blade to explain who he was. Quick note before you go, members get early access and a few videos that stay off the main channel. If that's interesting, the link is in the description. Otherwise, here's another video about the reason Obi-Wan was the only Jedi who could beat Darth Maul that you might like.